Something big is happening in Indonesia. Millennials and Gen Zs now make up more than half of all voters. It's the first time they've had the power to determine the country's next president. That's left candidates scrambling to attract the youth vote. But are the tactics working?
Kalau menurut aku sih kayak malah bikin target pasarnya tuh kayak iya apaan sih kayak gitu, malah kesannya tuh kayak bikin bego yang mau ininya gitu, yang mau milih dia.
Menurut saya ya cukup berhasil karena lebih friendly kesannya ke masyarakat serta anak-anak muda.
Tapi kalian ngerasa tergayat nggak dengan konten-konten seperti itu?
Aku sih enggak ya.
Sebenarnya nggak terlalu sih.
In the capital of Jakarta, I've organized to meet someone who understands what young voters want.
Saya tidak mengatakan bahwa gimmick itu adalah hal yang salah.
Betul.
Tapi kalau berlebihan, saya rasa itu menjadi wujud eksploitasi kebodohan masyarakat.
I think Gibran is already waiting. He's the leader of the student association at Universitas Gadjah Mada.
Halo, apa kabar?
I first came across Gibran when he grilled presidential candidate Prabowo Subianto at a live event at his university.
Dengan roadmap pendidikan seperti apa yang hendak Pak Prabowo berikan ketika Pak Prabowo berkuasa.
Then, he went further, handing all three candidates a manifesto of key issues and policy solutions written by him and other students.
Deg-degan nggak sih pas lagi ngasih?
Seneng sih Mbak, lebih keseneng ya, karena akhirnya ini menjadi contoh dan permulaan bahwa anak muda bisa loh menjadi subjek politik.
Like so many of Indonesia's young voters, Gibran spends his life online and he knows the way desperate politicians operate.
Pilihlah calon kontestan politik yang dia membawa misi, visi, dan solusi. Jangan cuman joget-joget, jangan cuman adu pantun. Mereka punya ranah yang beda gitu. Mereka adalah pembuat kebijakan, mereka adalah stakeholder tertinggi.
Menurutmu pemerintah kita tuh ngerti nggak sih sama anak-anak muda dan kebutuhan-kebutuhannya?
Apakah dengan pengetahuan mereka soal kondisi anak muda sekarang mampu untuk menjawab tantangan anak muda? Kurasa bukan tidak, tapi masih belum.
Across town, an outfit called Bijak Memilih is working on voter education.
Ayo sih, apa kabar?
Indonesian for Choose Wisely.
Halo, permisi.
The online platform helps voters learn more about the party policies and the issues they care about. It's the brainchild of collaborators Afu and Abi.
We're building a product that all of us here would love to use ourselves because it will solve our own pain.
What's young Indonesians' attitude towards politics? Do they actually care about politics?
Like the general narrative about young people in Indonesia is that they're apathetic. But in my personal opinion, they're more frustrated. I actually think there's a lot of interest for politics in young people and people in general in Indonesia, but it's a question of the depth of political literacy.
Indonesia is going through a collective, what I call a collective amnesia from 32 years of not having democracy and not having a proper civic education that trains you to critical thinking, asking your government for what you want. So there is like a lot of catching up that we're doing.
And the issues that young Indonesians care about, what do you guys think about that?
It's like corruption, freedom of speech, environment, climate change,
inclusion,
social inclusion,
jobs. We're not endorsing a particular position per se. Some of those issues are polarizing and people might have, depending on their values and ideologies, might have a different take. But at least we think that it should be properly discussed.
So, what's your message for young Indonesians? How should they vote? What do they have to know?
Don't just stop at what the presidential candidates are saying, because it's very cheap to say things of what you are going to do, but it's more credible when you compare that with their track records of what they have actually been doing. Political participation doesn't stop at election, right?
Yeah.
If anything, it's just the beginning. It's part of your job as a citizen to continue to monitor and criticize and provide inputs to your elected candidates, right? So the point is, it doesn't stop on February 14th.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. So I just went back from the interview with Bijak Memilih.
It was so fun meeting people around your age. The energy is there. It's really good to see young people having that vision for the country. We're arriving at Andovida Lopez's place.
Terima kasih. Hai Kak, waduh.
Sorry, lagi beli minyak. Maaf maaf pisang goreng.
Andovi is one of Indonesia's most popular YouTube personalities.
That's my brother right there.
With his brother, they've built a massive online following and a career in entertainment from scratch. They've got a different take on Indonesian politics.
The audition is happening right inside as we speak right now.
Their latest project is the political satire Polarisasi 2024.
So from Polarisasi, it's actually in the title itself. So Polarisasi literally translates to polarization. We really want to point out that no matter who you vote for in 2024, we as Indonesian citizens, we don't have to be polarized and start fighting against each other, right?
So like a little bit of an explainer, but in a fun way.
A little bit, but in a very musical, fun way.
Yeah, fun ways. Yeah.
We feel that politics is already hard enough. Election is already something so heavy. We want to try to give it through music and dance.
You definitely have seen contents of presidential candidates trying to appeal to young people by doing TikTok dance or being funny. Like, what kind of message do you want to give to them on being critical?
In my opinion, there is no problem for any presidential candidate to try to appeal to the youth. I think we are underestimating the first-time voters and the Gen Z of the Indonesian youth. They are way more critical than we give them the credit to be. But when we consume information, please consume the other side. I'm not saying it's gonna change your mind, but at least you have a more whole and fulfilling, zoomed out perspective of the election.
It's like meeting your junior high school idol, basically, and talking about politics with them.
Generational change in Indonesian politics is slowly happening, but there's a catch.
We're heading to the MPR DPR building to meet with Bia Roro.
Use your voice. Your voice matters.
This is actually my first time being in the MPR DPR building. Hai Bu Roro, apa kabar? Saya Natasha.
Roro is one of the youngest representatives of Golkar, an established political party with a long history.
So this is the office?
This is the office. Welcome, sit down.
Oh, thank you. What are the challenges of being a young politician in Indonesia for you?
I obtained a seat in parliament when I was 25 years old. I personally don't feel like I'm alone. There are this group of thriving and innovative parliamentarians who are young but also have something to share. Being young means you're deemed as somebody who is inexperienced and may not have that courage to speak on certain issues. And being underestimated may be one of the things that not only young politicians face. This is something that a lot of young people face irrespective of where we work.
Though Roro's clearly a hardworking representative, that might not be surprising given her background. Her father, Satya Widayuda, was also a Golkar politician. I wanted to know her thoughts on how his status had helped her career.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's a question that comes a lot. Being born into this environment, I'm able to kind of just learn, right? Learn about what it means to be a parliamentarian, what it means to listen to the needs of the people, what it means to be able to be there for them and advocate for certain issues. And I learned that growing up through my father. So many life lessons helped shape me to become the person that I am and have shaped the passion that I have to contribute to the country.
Politik dinasti yang terjadi saat ini. They've become part of the fabric of Indonesia.
Saya ini manusia unik di Republik Indonesia.
A small group of powerful families that have set the country's course since independence.
Saya ini anak Presiden Soekarno. Kok tepuk tangannya tidak bersemangat?
Love them or hate them, they dominate politics. From first President Sukarno, whose great-grandchildren are the family's latest politicians, to this election's presidential frontrunner Prabowo Subianto.
Kalau dinasti patriotik, apa salahnya?
The ex-son-in-law of former President Suharto and himself descended from another political family. But things weren't supposed to stay this way. Outgoing President Joko Widodo's election from humble beginnings in 2014 had filled hopes there'd be a move away from entrenched power. But as he hangs up his head, he's been accused of fostering his own dynasty after a controversial court ruling by his brother-in-law allowed his eldest son Gibran to run for vice president at the age of 36. Meanwhile, his youngest son Kaesang was installed a leader of the youth-focused Indonesian Solidarity Party just days after joining its ranks. It's clear, politicians love building dynasties.
Okay, let's go.
But what do young voters in Jakarta think?
Kayak lebih milih di mana kayak visi misinya dan kontribusinya sebelumnya gitu sih.
Saya kan memilih juga berdasarkan kinerja, bukan karena dia anak siapa atau kerabatnya siapa gitu sih, Kak.
Gimana ya?
Nah, itu bukan jadi salah satu faktor penentu sih. Jadi apa aja masih bisa saya pilih.
So, why do dynasties seem so hard for Indonesia to shake?
Politik Indonesia itu mahal banget. Siapa yang bisa masuk ke politik atau menjadi anggota legislatif atau calon bupati, wakil wali kota dan seterusnya, itu hanya yang punya uang gitu. Jadi high cost of politics itu atau high cost demokrasi itu menjadi penyebab kenapa fenomena politik dinasti ini atau political family ini muncul gitu. Kesempatan kita sebagai orang biasa itu makin terbatas gitu. Terus terang kalau saya ngerinya gitu ya.
Analinda says, even where progress is being made in political representation, elites still dominate.
Betul, angka tren politisi perempuan di DPR RI terus meningkat. Terakhir itu 20,1%. Bagus banget untuk 2019 ya. Tapi ketika kita zooming in, who are they? Anaknya
siapa?
Papa, istrinya siapa? Keluarganya siapa? Jadi masih elite, the women elite gitu.
Termasuk selebriti, Mbak?
Oh, exactly, termasuk selebriti.
Hundreds of women and men vying for seats in Indonesia's House of Representatives are household names. One who's been elected is Indonesian diva Krisdayanti. For a full day, we followed her as she campaigned in her East Java seat of Malang.
Tiga.
She's originally from this area, and when she ran for office 5 years ago, she demolished the competition. After spending time with her fans, we finally caught up with her late that night. Banyak yang bilang ya, tentu saja teman-teman perempuan di parlemen yang berlatar belakang selebriti atau ya lebih punya kesempatan karena kita tahu ada ongkos politik yang juga tidak murah.
Iya, tapi kalau saya ya dikategorikan artis terus lebih memiliki kesempatan untuk maju di parlemen karena ongkos-ongkos politik tadi. Kalau saya sih justru nggak mau, memang kalau logistik jelas ya dan lain-lain ada bantuan dari partai politik, tapi juga kita harus dengan kerja dan sungguh-sungguh.
While Krisdayanti says she's not opposed to her children following in her footsteps, even she can see the need for more diverse politicians.
Kayak anakku yang kedua itu kan 23 tahun, jadi dia mau ke politik tuh.
Oh, dia mau ke politik.
Jadi kadang diskus sesuatu sama.
Gak takut dituduh dinasti politik?
Nah, kalau saya sih lebih senang regenerasi ya. Ketimbang dinasti karena ya peluang kita untuk mengajak orang lebih luas kan positif jadinya gitu. Ya nggak salah gitu ya kalau misalkan mau anaknya hebat melalui sebuah proses, tapi saya lebih senang kalau kesempatan itu diberikan juga ke orang lain melalui proses regenerasi yang baik.
Whether you call it regeneration or nepotism, it seems political dynasties aren't going away anytime soon.
Kalau keluarga memberi anak-anaknya untuk republik, apa salahnya? Mas Gibran, jangan ragu-ragu Mas Gibran.
Meet Prabowo Subianto. He's used his wealth and connections to run for office again and again and again. His losses and false claims of electoral fraud have sparked deadly chaos on the streets of Jakarta. But in 2024, Prabowo Subianto might be headed for a win.
Prabowo Subianto dan Gibran Raka Buming Raka memiliki elektabilitas tertinggi yang mencapai 43,7%.
Voters like his promise to continue the policies of former rival Joko Widodo. And choosing the popular president's son as his running mate was a masterstroke. But something else is going on.
Gemes banget sekarang, Mbak.
Bapak lucu banget, sangat gemoy, 100% gemoy.
This 72-year-old former Special Forces commander has rebranded as a cute and cuddly grandpa beloved by young Indonesians.
Terima kasih.
Tim media sosial Pak Prabowo termasuk yang cukup kreatif, menghadirkan terobosan-terobosan, termasuk menggeser persepsi seorang Prabowo.
Pernah dengar nggak sih soal tuduhan pelanggaran HAM Prabowo di masa lalu dulu? Oh, belum pernah ya?
Belum tahu. Saya pribadi belum tahu apa ya, belum tahu latar belakang beliau kayak apa pribadi, karena saya pribadi belum melihat berita juga dan saya nggak lahir di tahun itu kan tentu.
So, what exactly are the allegations against Prabowo, and why are some people so concerned by his candidacy? Well, first, some history. Born into a political family, Prabowo joined the military young and began climbing the ranks. In occupied East Timor, it is alleged he oversaw the massacre of hundreds of civilians in 1983, a claim Prabowo calls a personal attack based on unproven allegations. While in the 90s, he was linked to alleged abuses in West Papua, which he also denies. Now known as a fearsome general and the son-in-law of President Suharto, Prabowo Subianto is alleged to have committed another atrocity, ordering the kidnapping of pro-democracy activists in the final months of Suharto's regime. At the time, Hida was in a relationship with activist Leonardus Nugroho Iskandar or Gilang. The last time she saw him, he was headed to a pro-democracy protest.
Dia bilang, kali ini jangan ikut karena aparat makin brutal. Dia bilang, jangankan nanti saya jagain kamu, itu jaga diri sendiri aja belum tentu.
Gilang didn't come home alive. Indonesia's National Human Rights Commission declared Gilang was murdered, 10 other activists were kidnapped and released, and 13 remain missing to this day. And here's where Prabowo comes in. The military dismissed him for ordering the abduction of several activists, saying he'd damaged the honor of the army and the nation. Years later, Prabowo defended his actions.
It could be considered preventive detention. Some of these activists, they were assembling bombs, and actually, perhaps in a different circumstance, we would be heroes.
Usman Hamid from Amnesty International doesn't have much time for that argument.
It's against the law. It's against international law. I can't understand why some people saying that, well, look, let bygone be bygone, It was, he was involved in the political kidnapping, but he had released all of them. What about the rest who are still missing until now?
Prabowo denies involvement in the murder and disappearances of activists and he's never faced trial. He did not agree to an interview with us.
Prabowo yang dulu dianggap sebagai figur yang keras, yang menakutkan barangkali, per hari ini sebagian masyarakat mempersepsikan dia lucu, imut-imut, sesuatu yang that's completely different. That's completely different. Itu sisi kita bicara tentang substance of democracy. Ada track record yang harus di-assess secara objektif, tetapi di sisi lain ada strategi marketing yang kemudian menggunakan teknologi digital media atau social media per hari ini yang kemudian bisa mengubah cara pandang persepsi masyarakat.
Hidup korban! Jangan diam! Hidup korban! Jangan diam! Hidup korban! Jangan diam! Jangan diam! Jangan diam! Jangan diam!
Corruption is one of Indonesia's biggest problems.
Banyak aturan ditekuk sesuai dengan kepentingan yang sedang memegang kekuasaan.
And every election, candidates promise they will do more to stamp it out.
Sekitar 230-an triliun dalam 10 tahun terakhir kerugian negara itu terjadi.
Korupsi adalah pengkhianatan terhadap bangsa. Korupsi harus diberantas sampai ke akar-akarnya.
But once they're in power, nothing much changes.
Mereka melihatnya korupsi ini merugikan rakyatnya nggak sih, Kak?
Merugikan banget lah, soalnya kan apa ya, kalau korupsi itu kan jelas banget ya, makan uang rakyat lah intinya, kayak gitu, udah pasti ngerugiin.
Oh jelas, pasti merugikan ya, merugikan negara, merugikan rakyat juga.
Politicians can't be trusted.
Apa pesan untuk masyarakat Sulsel, Pak?
Ya, saya mohon maaf.
And neither can the police.
Kita negara hukum, polisi tidak berhak menyiksa saudara saya.
The situation has gotten so bad, it has its own hashtag, percuma lapor polisi, or it's useless to call the police.
Assalamualaikum. Kan, apa kabarnya? Assalamualaikum.
Masyarakat kita jadinya ya karena nggak percaya sama polisi dan nggak trust, akhirnya ya itu kepatuhannya nggak ada, dan kemudian akses untuk mereka mau melapor ke polisi karena kalau misalnya ada ketidakadilan yang mereka rasakan itu jadi menurun gitu, kayak jadinya ya itu tadi muncullah si fenomena percuma lapor polisi itu ya.
Key takeaway-nya dari Mbak Tita sendiri apa, dan kemudian udah ngeliat belum sih ada perbaikan?
Enggak sih, belum sampai sekarang ya. Jadi
serius? Itu udah viral banget loh.
Itu udah viral banget, dan sampai segitu viralnya pun kita juga nggak ada perubahan yang signifikan yang terjadi gitu ya. Jadi emang selemah itu kondisi masyarakat kita yang nggak berdaya kalau kita hadap-hadapan sama aparat penguasa gitu ya. Karena polisi memang sekuat itu.
For years, one institution led the fight against corruption in Indonesia. The KPK, or Corruption Eradication Commission, exposed graft in the police force and in politics. Novel Baswedan, cousin of presidential candidate Anies Baswedan, was its star investigator.
Ini untuk berantas korupsi ini harus orang-orang yang berani.
After years of chasing corrupt cops, two retaliated, dousing him in acid and leaving him partially blind.
Saya nggak pernah merasa menjadi korban, saya harus bisa memisahkan antara apa yang merupakan kepentingan saya sebagai seorang pribadi dan apa kepentingan saya untuk berkontribusi demi kepentingan kemanusiaan.
Despite his sacrifice, Novel and dozens of his colleagues were fired from the KPK in 2021. One of a number of attacks on the corruption watchdog under President Joko Widodo.
Saya melihat justru undang-undang KPK dilemahkan, KPK-nya dalam tanda kutip dikerjai dengan orang-orang yang bermasalah dimasukkan. Saya melihat belum ada upaya sungguh-sungguh dari negara.
One reason why stamping out corruption is so hard is because even those found guilty of graft are allowed back in power.
Indonesian Corruption Watch lagi mau menunggu Mas Kurnia. Iya, ada tulisan on air. Mas Kurnia, ada berapa banyak sih politisi yang bekas mantan koruptor bahkan yang pernah dipenjara? Kan ada kan catatan ICW punya kan?
Ada 56. 56 orang
sekarang duduk
yang sekarang sedang mencalonkan diri sebagai calon anggota legislatif, baik DPD, DPRD maupun DPR RI. Harusnya mereka membuat filter ketika mencalonkan calon anggota legislatif orang-orang yang tidak pernah tersangkut kasus hukum. Itu kan sederhana tolak ukurnya. Ternyata mereka tidak melakukan itu.
Dari 3 capres ini, mereka bersih nggak sih dari korupsi?
Tantangan mereka hari ini adalah yang mengakibatkan situasi pemberantasan korupsi mengkhawatirkan saat ini adalah kerja-kerja dari partai politik. Di mana partai politik yang melemahkan agenda pemberantasan korupsi adalah partai politik yang mengusung mereka.
As Indonesia prepares to vote for its next president, calls for change are getting louder.
Yang kita hadapi ini, negara, dia sebenarnya sudah dikuasai oleh segelintir orang yang sebenarnya oligarki ini udah solid banget di antara mereka. Jadi yang kita lihat pemilu segala macam kan ini sebenarnya cuma panggungnya mereka untuk bagi-bagi kekuasaan kan.
Menurut saya kita harus membongkar sistem yang ada sekarang.
Experts say greedy politicians need to be reined in.
We have to bring back KPK to the way it used to be. And then we also have to have a stricter regulation in terms of conflict of interest. I think that's the real problem in Indonesia at this moment. Corruption is not only about taking the money from the government and the people, but it has direct impact to our everyday lives.
It feels like almost everyone has lost faith in the institutions meant to protect them.
Do you still trust police?
Dan jawaban saya hari ini tidak.
Kepercayaan sangat kecil. Ada tapi sangat-sangat kecil. Karena kepolisian kita bermasalah di sisi akuntabilitas.
Polisi buruk karena sudah terbiasa sama korupsi, tidak ada akuntabilitas. Makanya bagi aku korupsi itu harus selalu menjadi prioritas pemerintah untuk ditentaskan.
Gimana bisa partai kita bebas dari korupsi ketika sistemnya itu emang melembagakan korupsi?